so excited to come in, they're swimming so that they can get. No, they're so excited. Some of them do know what they're excited, still, they're so excited.
That would be why the owl's not showing up. It wasn't plugged in. Yeah. I'm like, why is I can have all it took to the computer? Why is it not? Ooh, Zoom looks different. The little end button is different, and it's very close to the corner where you want to extend things.
Awake.
Hey, Director Keithley. Begin when you're ready.
What's that?
So we can begin when you're ready.
Okay, let's call the meeting to order with Blake Peterson, Holly Riegelman, Tracy Klinger, and Sarah. And we have a document that Blake's shared to our drive. So if we want to open that, start tearing that apart. I mean, the whole purpose is to have a document prepared for Friday presentation.
And a question there, are we expecting to have a separate presentation available? Or do we just want to send out a distributed document, talk it through, or are we expecting to present something, meaning?
I don't think we have any expectations.
Okay.
It's just to get the. And I'll, in my notes, I'll review that, you know, what we thought the time frame would be. Let's see.
If we look at that document, I'd recommend opening up your 4 goal measurables spreadsheet. And notes probably.
Wait, can you share that document with me too? It's a big ass, I'm sorry.
When did you say board goal
The
note
proposal.
and?
Yeah, notes in the 4 goal measurables, Google sheet. When you're ready, I can just walk through the document real quick and then
Okay.
Give all my caveats. This is why it's not as bad.
Yep. Not as bad. Okay. Ready.
So, I'm not sure what to say in background. I might as well have done like a lorem ipsum, but I thought what we wanted to do was connect our connect this process with our mission, vision, and kind of the alignment of the district strategy. That was what I think wanted to achieve in the background. I didn't achieve it, but for our conversation, that's, I think, the purpose of having a background. As well as sort of set the table for this kind of framework of how we're doing it. Which is the goals, the monitors, the pillars, which I called conditions, but I think we want to talk about that, and there's a reason why. So, okay, so I think a summative background. Here's why we do goal setting. Here's how it connects to our mission and vision. This is what you can expect to read about coming up. Also, I think this is a board document in this iteration. And then either we work with Athena, or we continue to work as a committee at taking it from board and educator language to community facing. Okay, so background's not complete, but that's the purpose. Conditions is more-ish complete. And so this was pillars until about 9 o'clock last night. But it kept kind of referencing a metaphor instead of what are we trying to achieve? And really I guess what I was getting at is there's conditions for success. There's conditions that are evidence of success. And really what we're looking at are the conditions in our buildings of safety, opportunity, belonging, and achievement. And so when those conditions are met, when those conditions are pursued, in a way, it's kind of board intent. What's the intent of all of this? If your efforts are pursuing safety as defined here, and belonging as defined here, and opportunities, belonging here, and achievement, then what you're pursuing is pursuing conditions of success in the eyes of the board, the community. That's why I kind of went to conditions language.
I like it.
Yeah, I like that.
And then the goals, goal statements are supporting it. So, my challenge in writing is always to simplify. It's never like, oh, words here. It's usually, how do I take away words? So conditions is pretty lean. And if we want to broaden it, then just let me know how we want to broaden it, or take a stab at broadening. Oh, and I do think it's worth going over the definitions, but I like just talk about that again, how we define those, and make sure that that's what we want to. So, do you have any thoughts along the way? I might be offended, but
The same anyway. Same anyway. I mean, I think this is good. I think we don't want to expand unless we go to the board and then there's
Expanded definition.
misunderstanding or questions or whatever, and then that'll be an indicator that we need more.
yeah, I could broaden and sort of try to type out what I just explained about conditions being
Yeah,
kind of material experience of our kids and our staff.
Well, we could, I guess to be transparent, we could, but and let me just say this out loud and we'll see if it fits in here, if there's even a way to articulate it. The thing that the conditions does for me, which is a key component of what I have always thought that we have been missing, and that is the trajectory. That's the pursuit of, because you aren't successful until you've reached the goal. Well, that's not true. I want to define success as having a clear path and working toward that path. You should be able to say that we have found some success when you
along the
are
way.
going along, when you are increasing on the continuum. I want to acknowledge success in those efforts, even though our ultimate goal is, what are the stated goals? You know what I mean? And I don't know that we've,
Yeah, that's hard to capture.
well, we haven't, I mean, in all of our reports that we get about whatever it is, it's always, we still haven't met it. We still aren't there yet. We haven't achieved it. Okay, well, what have we done towards that goal? I think that's worthy of note, I guess. To me.
Success is probably.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And
Yeah, I like that.
this says this is what the board is about. That we acknowledge that.
Yeah. Like that.
So how do you say that? And it's worthy of it.
Yeah. Well, it might be worth broadening and I really wrestled through what this document should look like and how it should feel. There's because I think it's a pretty robust, like, to really communicate what we're trying to get at. we have to put words to the page, but how and where do you summarize it?
Mhm.
And where do you provide that depth? And I think that's more of an explanatory, like, what is this about? That might actually fit well in the background. Um.
Yes.
So I put a note for me to maybe take a stab at that, but
So, so one thing maybe that we should do is read, I mean, we have a lot of notes about what the monitors were. Um, and then the goal statements and then what and how we're gonna measure. We have a lot of information about that. So what do we want to finish today?
yeah.
So that we have that context first and then we'll figure out
So
if we have time for.
So I asked some questions, as I was sitting here and I went through a lot of like. I'll spare you all the process. So we could look at goals and the way that we present them in a lot of different ways. We could put them on a table. You say, here's the goal statement. Here's what condition it supports, right? So this is a safety, belonging, and an opportunity and goal. We could organize by, here's safety, here's the goals under safety, here's belonging, here's the goals under belonging. Honestly, it all started getting a little bit muddied, and when I looked at the measurables document, the spreadsheet, and then, yeah, there's 2 tabs on there that sort of start to identify our goals. We actually don't have too many goal statements. We have a lot of information that we've considered.
Yeah.
And so I think tightening down, we need to tighten down what those goal statements are that we're gonna propose. We also need to, it would help me if we figured out how we want to present that.
And when you say we don't have too many goal statements, do we have the right number? Do we still need more? We don't want too many?
I think we have awesome buckets, and that's what I started to get enthusiastic about, even as I sat there and went, wait a second, this is really short. Because we have that seed survey, and I went through like 3rd grade, 6th grade, and 10th grade surveys to try to like start to look at where are we going to start pointing our efforts. We have the seed survey. We talked about STAR and the one that we told Dibbles and I ready as far as achievement. We talked about MTSS academic tiers. That was a big conversation we had, and then regular attendance rates. And that, sorry, so that's the other kind of idea or consideration for this committee is we have our goals are supposed to fit within like a 5-year horizon. But year one, I'm very interested to hear what you think about this, but year one, a lot of that is baseline data collection.
Yes.
Honestly, because either new systems or we're using them in a different way that we want to project on.
Yeah.
So do we want in this document, in order to preserve the momentum of this goal setting process, do we want to say, hey, here's academic year 24-25, establish baseline data for seed survey?
Yes.
Proposed or tentative academic year 25-26 would be increased participation rate of the seed survey, dependent on, what I'm saying, like
Yes.
somehow, and look at these questions. I think I was struggling to layer those in a way that makes sense and is clear.
Well, so one thing we could do today is outline that framework. Be intentional about specifying that we don't want to just put, like what the end number is in year 5, but that we have intentionally laid out a very specific plan to get us. And the first year is this, that's clear, data gathering. But then second year, we say, And I suppose we wouldn't really set the goal until we see the data? Or would you?
No,
Right.
because what if it's 90%? Right?
And we say
That's just what you
80%.
said.
It's like, oh.
But what we've identified is that in this time frame, based on this data, we will specify what the goal is. And then based on what, you know, from the district, it might be possible, I don't know, to then set the goals for each year, a realistic high and low goal. Would it be possible with that baseline data to establish goals for each year at that juncture, or would you need to wait for something else?
No, I mean, a goal is a goal. It's a target.
Yeah.
And I think then the question is, like, there's a lot of philosophy behind goal setting, and some people would say you should always set it at 100%, right? Yes. And there are people that were like, you want realistic goals that you feel like you can attain. And if you have realistic goals that you can attain, what happens if you do or don't meet them is always a question that people will have. But I think you can set them, and if you surpass them, then what does that mean? That doesn't mean you stop, right? So it's just kind of an indicator of progress. When I think about, like, as a part of the integrated guidance plan, we set 5 years worth of goals, very incremental. For like the big things that the state measures, but I mean, you could do something similar with the other goals.
Yeah, I like calling them progress goals so that I just think it's more transparent so that when people see these are the goals and they see, okay, we've met year 3 goal, they still see that that's a progress goal and that we're not complete. And that's clear if we call them progress goals, that we're still
Yes,
moving towards.
correct.
With some of the
Whatever the
measures
goals.
that we've used over time, like iReady or Dibbles, the historical data would help you set, like, how much have we been growing? What has been happening? Have we, are we back to where we were before COVID? Like some of those sorts of things.
I was gonna say, some of them, we probably have some data. The seed one is,
Right.
seed surveys.
I don't even know when we're gonna
But
get
the
that.
dibbles or the,
Well, and what I love about the
Everybody.
progress goals is it combines the conversation about being on the continuum.
Yeah.
And it solidifies that thought process into
Yeah.
what we do.
Yeah, so our goal statements. What do we want to call goal statements? We want to call them
No, I think this. I mean, because right now we know what the statements are, but we haven't defined numbers to it. Oh,
we
have.
know what some of the statements are.
Okay.
I don't know that we know them all. So maybe
some of them, we have some ideas of how we're
yeah.
gonna come up with a statement.
And then the other part here is just to talk about monitors. Say monitors, so we talk about
Working on the roof.
and maybe it's worth just really quickly going over the goals paragraph. So there's specified measurable targets for improvement, the advanced district toward the conditions detailed. The committee, anyway, editorial. So on the basis of pertinence, is the goal closely related to the conditions that the district is pursuing? Effectiveness, would the achievement of this goal most reflect the improvement of our conditions? That's well stated. Durability is the phrase I went with, which is will the goals information be available for our use comparable to previous information in the future? Timeliness, is it current? And availability, is it available without undue distraction from core purpose, teaching and learning?
Really good.
So trying to define kind of that 5 categories. So then monitors are really those things that are pertinent, but might lack in effectiveness or durability, for example. They're almost pertinent and available is really what they are, because they're things like District 22 standards that maybe we can extrapolate a little bit and say, well, that's kind of a monitor toward that condition, but it's not something that we want to say. This is our goal because it might distract or create an undue influence. So we talked about this with referral data that maybe we do end up including, but we talked about referral data. Really, we want it just to align with our student disciplinary handbook. Does that process and assess fidelity there before we start saying, well, reduce major incidents, because then it could result in poor practices.
Right, and that's, I think, a perfect example of what we're getting at, that we don't wanna have an artificial statement that does create something that unintended. So,
Do you
I,
want to share the measurables document with me again? That's the one that you originally shared, right? I cannot get into that or find it anywhere in my drive. For who knows what reason.
You should have it now. I just resent it, but it's board goal measure.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, so maybe we start going through the measurables.
Thank you.
yeah. I just have to get there.
So yeah, we kind of had, like,
I see column there.
yeah, Sarah's in here.
You finding it, Kathy?
I'm gotta get to the drive. It's not
Here, let me just reshare it with you and then it'll pop up
in my Gmail though.
in your Gresham.
Yeah. Your school board one.
Not on there.
Do you need me to share it with a
Either.
different
I'm here.
address?
Put it here. No. mm-mm.
Okay.
Nope.
She's just operating
I'm
on 3
here.
devices.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And if I do it both, hence printing is super effective for me, because then nobody has to watch this process. Yeah. It's super fun for everyone involved.
So we do have,
Would we benefit from putting it up there? And then
Possibly.
maybe talking it through? Is that possible?
I can do that if you don't.
okay,
Yeah,
I mean, if you need to be sharing.
Sit
Maybe
here.
better.
please. Yeah. Most definitely will
Are you
be
guys
better than our,
being passive aggressive and making fun of me?
no, I'm saying share the document over the picture. That's, we don't need to be seen, we don't
I
need to be
love
seen at 8
closing
AM.
and reopening on an iPad.
Yeah. Well, and I was earlier when you said you should open this and this, and I was like, I don't know if I know how to,
Yeah, that's fine.
on my home thing, I can have all 3 in.
Oh, yeah.
So then I can go back to this other document.
So I did a little bit of homework too. So I can offer some context for what I did to this once people kind of reacclimate.
Yeah, we talk about like a current condition. Yeah, you put in those things.
So I used these goals. And on this tab, started kind of a schedule, like where would these actually fit with the meetings that we have? The ones that are green are time sensitive because of when the data is available or something like that, you know, there's some reason it needed to be there. The others could be moved around if there's a different order. So I literally took the things from the first tab and just kind of figured out where they would fall in all of this. So these are the number of like data points to present during the year, and some of these I have some questions about. Then what I did, so I was like, well, what does this actually do to our regular draft, our planner, right? So this is the planner that Kathy and Chris use. So this is like the stuff that has to happen every month. And so I added the things that are part of the school process just in blue. So you just kind of get a visual of like, where does it all fall? How much of that, how much stuff is happening each month? Because I do think being sure, there's some months that are more heavy with like some district required something. Just to kind of see where the things kind of fall.
So those are all the things that we have to get a report on.
Yes,
And the blue represents.
the things that are related to this process. These blue things are this list. And then there were still other things where I was like, okay, maybe at the bottom of this one, like there's still a bunch of things related to district goals that are kind of up there. Like, so those might be presentations that the district team would still want to do about our goals and the work that we're doing. So how those play into this process, I just didn't want to lose track of, like, you probably need a DLI update because we're gonna be moving into middle school year from now, right? Those sorts of things that aren't necessarily,
Yeah.
but also we could say, well, DLI update's about opportunity,
And
right?
belonging.
It's about belonging. It's,
Right.
so it's, that's just kind of the list of, like, here's some of the other things, but that's what I,
Yes.
well, and MTSS is on here. So there's some things I just would, I could kind of explain with some things, like this isn't something we've talked about here, but it's something that we've been doing that I think would help the conversation. So that's what I was doing since our last meeting. However, that plays into the bigger picture of what you want to do on Friday. And
Well,
all open for
I don't know if you
discussion,
know how
obviously.
people work, but you're gonna get no credit on Friday.
That's
but
fine.
We're gonna parade this forward.
Excellent. You do what you need to do.
You do that.
Yeah.
Well, so
He's excited.
So if you change or add things here, then we can just add things on that other thing, but we also just need to be. I was surprised at how many. Like presentations this ended up being, right? And so then you start to balance that with. Some of the board goal request or the board request process and some of those things and where there's time and space for some of that to happen as well. I've heard as priority of the board. So anyway.
So, number one, thankfully for you to pull all this together, because as you look at this, it's like, man, we have done a lot of intentional work. So I really appreciate you pulling that together. And it is exciting to see how it all kind of matches. So we want to talk about that and say, here's how we got there briefly, but at the end of the day, especially for brand new board members, it has to be so summarized.
Yeah.
This is the goal. This is what we're gonna see with baseline data, and this is how often we're gonna see it. Like 4 things. So that they see the same thing every time. And, you know, I guess I'll say this out loud and I assume it will be, but we haven't been very intentional about saying, when we get a presentation, how does this match board go? And then when we do, like what our request spreadsheet, it's not really, it's just, we just pick one, So I want to be more intentional about that at every meeting. This is what it is, and this is why you're hearing it.
Well, and on the side, I thought maybe was it you, what, like, we had talked about even like a common format or something for how
Yes,
presentations are laid
Yes.
out, and we don't have that yet either, so just not losing track of, that will help with what you just described, Kathy.
yes,
Yeah, the familiarity and.
Yeah, just kind of the routine of it all,
Yeah,
like,
so
even
that
if it's
each-
the first
each
slide that.
Slide isn't being explained. Here's what you're seeing. Here's,
Mhm.
How,
We're not
how
learning
long
each
do
time.
we have on Friday?
I want to say 90 minutes.
90 minutes, I think.
Okay.
Is what you said.
Cause I think a little like 5 minutes should be spent talking about practices that the board. As part of this proposal could expect to see changed, to. So for example, in board docs. We will have those conditions identified. And so when we get a facilities update. This pertains to belonging, for example, safety,
Right,
or both. Like. So we can start to expect to see that on our board docs.
Yes.
When you open up an agenda item, it's gonna tie to something.
yes,
Yeah, from a presentation standpoint, this will be a phase-in thing. We're not expecting it from day one. But over time, those presentations are gonna start taking a common format. You're gonna hear language about goals and monitors much more frequently. Remember, this ties to our goal statement. We're chasing this number. This helps monitor these conditions, and I think just orienting the board to this is what you can expect to see changed if you adopt this proposal. This is how we see it affecting operationally, how we receive information. So I think 5 minutes dedicated to that.
Yep.
Part 90. And I think that's a place where maybe them hearing stuff from you would be helpful.
Do you see us giving the outline and then, or would that be? And this after,
So
like, so now you see everything and this is how, or maybe right before the approval, you know, say, okay, so you've got this whole background. I don't know.
yeah, so let's think through an agenda of how we present, because that will help how we put the document together. So I think we'll do where we've been quickly. So I don't know, Sarah, if it's easy to grab like,
I have all of them.
yeah, here's the meetings, here's all the meetings we did.
I mean, and I literally printed out all the,
Okay,
in paper.
You found your.
Well, and their presentation that we talked about at the last.
yeah, in February. And so.
Yeah.
then
That's
we
kind of where they're
updated
left
you. Yep, and so since then, this is what we've done. That needs to be like 2 minutes, and it's really only try to get them up to speed.
I will prepare that because then
Okay.
we can then I can include the little retreat, you know, assigned. Is then what we've done and we've really tried to, mostly just so that they have a list of the meetings and what we've done. Generally. So that'll be 2 minutes.
Somewhere there. I don't know, I'm throwing it arbitrary.
Yeah,
numbers.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be long, but I do think they need the depth of our work and Tracy's work.
Well, and you asked for feedback from them in the main work session, and there were some changes that were made
Yes,
from that
right.
time. I think
Yep.
that's always important to highlight,
Yep.
that there were some
Yeah, good point.
adjustments based on that feedback.
Yep.
I think maybe a second review to make sure we did. I know there's one word that we kept.
Vigilance we got rid of.
We got rid of vigilance, you're right.
Yeah, we did.
And instead of a shared something to accountability, I just said a shared accountability
Hmm.
in safety. I felt like that was less well, I thought it reflected accurately what we're trying to get at.
Yeah.
So then if we go, here's where we've been. So then, 5 minutes, 10 minutes on framework, 5 minutes. Right? The concept of conditions, goals.
Meaning this document.
In a way, the top part of that document. Yeah, just the summary view of that document. So maybe after you talk about where we've been. Here's the proposal, this is where we are, that's when we kind of distribute. Start talking through if people have a paper in front of them. Does that help them absorb the information you're telling them, or does it distract them?
It helps me,
Yeah. it helps me.
And I was just
and I
gonna
like
say-
to write on them, like as I have
That's
thoughts, I like
yep.
to.
Yes, for sure.
Okay,
And, you know, everybody will be different, so we presented it for those that need that.
would it help to have kind of somewhere in this board, here are your options, or here's what we're looking for out of today?
Mhm.
We're gonna be looking for your approval of this, or this is your first look at it. We're gonna get approval at the work session in September. I don't know what we're actually,
I don't know if we said it the last.
It seems
I think we
like,
said that we would be looking
Looking
for
for
the approval in August of.
Yeah, I mean, I think that should be,
yeah, actually, the times that I was looking at is when we, you know, when we were gonna be looking at the actual goals, the timeframes that we had, not what we were doing with the board. And I'd have to go back and look at the minutes.
and I think it's nice to have the starting point be prior to the start of a school year.
Yeah.
Just cleaner, you know.
So I'm gonna just,
It could be that it's like approving the conditions or even just the verbiage, like the word conditions, right? Like that's what we're gonna call things. But it seems like the timeline and some of that, like we might have a way to get started this fall and it may be great and it may need some adjustments, right?
Well, so if they approve in August, when would the first year of the board goals start for gathering data? Would it be this?
well, I
calendar year
think
or
as
fiscal
long
year?
as we structure the goal statements to be baseline data collection
Mhm.
and assessing fidelity,
Mhm.
I think that's fair. I don't,
Agreed.
Mhm.
do you,
Mhm.
okay, as long as we're not saying we need to get to 80% by the end of this
Yeah.
academic year, I think that would be inappropriate.
Mhm.
So,
So this document will be, and our, we need to figure out how we combine these and show them,
Mhm.
whether that's printed, but
I have ideas on the calendar side of it, which I would like to have, even if it's a 5-page thing. Here's a calendar, and I will work on that. I think I'm really struggling with how to present the goal statements
Mhm.
inside the document. And how to organize.
I don't. Okay, so whatever
This
we
document.
do, even this one, and we either, because there are board members that forget that that's here and don't go back and look at it. So I do want to make it, you know, we've used this as something to tie everything into. I want to be clear about that. I don't know if we print each one of these so that I don't know if it'll be, you know, solidify in their mind when they see it printed, this is what we're working with. I don't know, you can decide that. When you said goals and all of the ones that it does, that resonated with me more. But
Oh, so like, here's the goal statement, here's what it pertains to.
yeah,
Okay,
but is it, I guess I'd have to see it, is it worth then just breaking those out so that you then see redundantly safety goals?
well, and it wouldn't be that hard to also present it on the flip like an indexed
Hmm.
document where you see it in 2 ways.
Mhm.
Here's all the goals that pertain to safety, but here's all the goals. I definitely started there, which tells me that's how it was best organized in my brain,
Mhm.
but then it felt, well, I got into the trap, we don't yet, we will today have a lot of goal statements, that's okay.
Yeah, I think, so if I were to look, I mean, as you said that, and I have, staff person or whatever, and they have something that comes up, or they need to present it, you're first gonna look at. I've just changed my mind. I first thought that you should have them by category, and then just as a reference point, which one is in all three. But then if they're looking for, if they're gonna make a presentation, then it's more, you know, what the goal is, as opposed to whether it fits into safety. So I think it has to be done first by goal. And the goal is in all three of these, and then list them out.
Right.
That's my final answer.
We can do that. So agenda, what are we looking for? So we'd be looking for. Tracy talked about, maybe it's just the conditions, but I do feel a little bit like we got that in February, even if it wasn't a formal action. We got that tentative, like, yes, we
Proceed.
like this construct. I feel like the board deserves a little bit more teeth this time. I'm also, I don't
Yeah,
think there's
more of a
necessarily urgency if we say this is. This is your first time seeing the document, here's like a first reading, let's talk about it at the session. And then formally adopt, or,
Well, let's ask them, give them that choice. Are you comfortable? Do you feel like you've got enough of a baseline to adopt today. If you do, then we will proceed with data collection. If you feel like you need more time, this can be a first reading and we can adopt, you know. I don't know what our agenda looks like.
Yeah, I
Sarah?
think what they need more of is the
Very
goals and the
full.
monitors. I
Full.
agree. I think they got the conditions. That's what we focused on in the last one, and it wasn't about whether they, I mean, I think they bought into those conditions. It was just about the wording of those. We didn't talk with them about goals really or
Monitors.
monitors, just that we were going to have them.
Yeah.
So I think we present more on what are our goals and how will we monitor them. I think that'll be more of the teeth that you're talking about, and then
I think I
based on how they feel about
go
that.
back to the vision piece. I think the vision piece is important with
Because
the.
they didn't see this
They
other
haven't
than the
seen any
blue.
of that.
I mean, they
but
saw
I-
the blue on a different
Mhm.
sheet, right? But they haven't seen any of the draft goals.
And Tracy, when you say share the vision, what did you mean?
Well, just this column, kind of the thinking behind what's drafted here as a goal, like what are we trying to accomplish?
Mm,
Yeah.
Like this measurement is about determining the baseline, but we're hoping to see some growth there unless we restate these. Maybe that's not a good example. Maybe this one's a better example.
Well, I think that the concept of success is progression on the continuum. That goes in right before we review our draft statements, monitor statements,
Yeah, I
right?
agree.
Okay,
Yeah, so we can just do the overview. I think the background and the conditions part is short. And then the goals. You put that in, like you talked about right before we talk about draft goals.
Okay, draft,
so right before we review the sheet that's got the draft monitors, then we talk about that concept of we are defining success as progress on the continuum.
so you see that from a presentation standpoint.
Yes,
You see that in your, so if we did, you do all the background,
yeah,
you would say this is, or would that be a framework conversation?
I actually could do it here, and maybe that's the first time they hear it, and then when we go here, say, remember,
Mhm.
on the continuum, we determine success as being on the continuum.
I'm gonna put it in my notes because I wanna make sure I.
And
think
then
that through.
you're gonna, your document here, you will present.
Yeah, and we'll call that the framework.
Okay.
But then I want the document to grow, and I will work on growing the document according. Where we go in our conversation today, but with goal statements,
Right,
and then I think we. Yeah, we'll figure out how Holly's presenting that.
Good one. I think that here's where we've been and where we are. I think that needs to go into the background, but it also needs to be part of reviewing conditions. Because like Tracy mentioned, we need to talk about the changes that we made to those definitions after whenever we met last
Yep.
May.
well, that'll be in the background, right? I have that in the
I'm
background.
sorry, I guess I'm doing it like this. So background,
No,
like his document that he has, I'm
right, in
Separated.
the background for CK is, all the dates that we've met and what we discussed during that time,
Okay.
so it's before it gets to this document.
okay.
But that's a good clarification, and I will review that and then talk about the concept of, the continuum thing. And then it goes to you for the actual. Oh, do you want me to do here's where we are today? I mean, you're gonna see some monitors for the first time. And so if you are comfortable after this discussion, we can adopt this today. And if you would prefer, do we wait for that? Do you want me to do that then?
I think just introducing them to what are we expecting of you. And then where have we been and where are we going is. Remember you saw this update, Since then, this is what we've been working on, And what you're going to see is both a framework, draft goals, and a vision for where those goals could go. I think just really setting that. And then I can go into detail on the framework itself.
Okay, draft goals and, framework, draft goals. Do you want me to call them monitors or just where we see, what, you know, ideas, suggestions as to where we see it going? How do you want me
Yeah.
to spring that?
Yeah, actually, I think we can fill out your section easier after we get through the whole thing, because I really think you want to basically give them, here's the map of where you're gonna go today.
Mhm.
And that's gonna include arraying those, those goals and presentations over a calendar. This is how we'd see the next academic year reporting happen based on these goals. That's of course contingent on them adopting this proposal. Whether that's today or a month from now, or taking it back to the committee for another 6 months. Join this meeting. Yeah.
Which is what I hope they do.
I know Tracy wants that, especially.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
She's just looking for things to do.
Mhm.
okay. So, but, so both of those things under background CK are the things that I'm doing within that. Right?
Mhm.
Yeah, okay. And then Blake does the framework.
There, it's gonna be there.
Yep.
It's
Gonna be here.
there. It's probably gonna be in the next one too.
Yeah, tell them 7 times.
It's
Two powerful letters, see that? That under goal statement. Don't want to, you don't.
So where's, okay, so. I'm sorry, go.
Mhm.
We gotta get all of this done.
Yep.
And then,
so-
and, okay,
So let's go back to the spreadsheet
Yeah, the goal, draft goals, that one.
and. I'm gonna look here and I will try to fill out agenda. Notes here so that I can somehow incorporate. Um. I think our draft goal. Under there, which is a super easy target for an academic year, is establish baseline. Seed participation data. And maybe we want to start calling out specific questions, establish baseline data for question 9, which is the safety one.
I like
In the,
that
in the
specificity.
high school one, it's question 30, is a lot about opportunity. And what I thought is. Vision wise, where this goal should go, I think, is we want a positive response rate, which is strongly agree or agree. In, whatever percent strongly agree and agree on specific questions. The issue is that has to be representative. And so this is where I got all twisted up, right? So we have a goal of establish baseline data. We have a goal of improving response rate to that survey so that it's a reasonable sample. And then we have a goal of improving the actual responses we're receiving, so that vision is tiered for that particular goal, for example. What do you think of that? Because we don't really know.
Yeah, I worry a bit about looking at data just in isolation. So I think as a baseline, yes, we have the starting point, but I actually think that when we look at a summary of data, we need to be looking at all of these safety things all together. Like when we're thinking about safety, it's all these pieces. To have it be more about the condition than it is the seed data point, right? So the seed data point might show up if there's information presented about safety with other data points. And there might be opportunity data, that the seed data comes back. Remember, hey, remember, this is where, here's a couple of questions that were specific to that with these other pieces when we think about opportunity collectively. So that's just kind of what I'm processing a little bit, is how do we paint the full picture of safety and not just have little points in isolation that don't actually paint the full picture.
I think in a presenting fashion, I like that a lot, because I think when you present it and it's a data point isolation, you're
Mhm.
missing the whole big picture. But I think for collection of the data, you still have to collect those independently and then somehow
Mhm.
use them together to paint the full picture of safety when we're presenting it to the board, I guess. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Um,
Back to your point, identifying specific questions. Are there specific grade levels we want to look at? Are there specific? I mean,
and
there
are
are
they gonna change the numbers? So don't
Yeah,
put
who
numbers.
knows?
Cause number 9 maybe
So
won't be
it might
number
be
9.
the questions related to, connected to safety for fourth grade, eighth grade, 10th grade, to just make something up, you know?
Well, and on that, so specifically talking about seats, I think it's perfectly okay for us to punt that to next year's for gold. We just wanna prime it that, hey,
Mhm.
if we were in this seat a year from now, what we'd wanna look at are maybe specific responses. That are pertinent to most pertinent to the conditions that we're talking.
Yeah.
And it's okay
Yeah.
to not have those identified, though I think it would help instill confidence in the board and the process if we were just able to say, for example, in this current seat survey.
Yeah.
We would want to monitor, there's a couple of questions that we identified. as
Yeah, that
things
speak
we
to
want.
what our goal is. Yeah.
Mhm. We don't even know what the data from the state's gonna look like. So to your point,
Yeah.
like,
Right.
we don't know if they're gonna organize it by grade level.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, if there's less than 30 10th graders that responded, we're probably not gonna get that data at all, right? So
Right.
we don't know what we're gonna get yet.
Do you think it would
specifically
be,
for that one.
just kind of hashing out this, if it were to improve the response rate was the goal,
Mhm.
do you think that's reasonable of the board to ask? And not a distracting strategy?
I think it's worth the ask, and I don't know, I mean, we want that data too, so, the trick is that it's not required, we're required to offer it, and it's gonna be how that plays out. So can it be a goal and something we work towards? Absolutely, and some of that might just be awareness of why it's important and all of those sorts of things. I know our summer program students were required to participate. I don't know what that looked like yet. So I think we don't know enough. But it seems like participation is the right place to start.
I think participation, and I also think explaining to students, like, part of the reason students stop doing surveys is because they think there's no point, right? Like, we don't know who's looking at this. We don't know why they care. Is anybody even looking at it? Nobody cares, right?
Mhm.
Like, that's their overall thought. So if the board puts together a presentation or whatever we want to do, that's going to be in their advisory class when it's presented about why our specific Gresham-Barlow School Board is looking at this data and what we're hoping to see from the data, that has a lot more meaning. Like, high school kids want to do things that are meaningful. And if they think their voice is going to have an impact, they are way more likely to fill that out and share honestly. Like, generationally, that's what this generation does really well, but it has to have an impact. So if they think it's going off to state somewhere where nobody cares, they're out.
And what went through my mind as you're talking is I went from how I am old to the new generation. When a new student comes on in their family, do they have any idea how the board conducts business and why we do what we do? And what we're basing what we do on them? It's all for them. We've never had that conversation. So if I thought, okay, first I'd put a letter in there. Hi, we're the board. We really want to hear from you. In fact, it's so important that we've built our goals around what you tell us, but you have to tell us. Then I thought, why aren't we doing the mayor does weekly,
Mhm.
whatever he does, and it's a video, and he just talks about things. I'm like, Holly, when we made those goals, it's so critical that we hear from parents. I mean, how do you, and that engages them. I mean, that might be way overkill, but we've never told them how important it is, to your point.
Or do they even know who we are?
But
Like,
No.
to that point, like a little video of one of you explaining,
Yeah.
like, this is like, I'm a real person that lives in Gresham, right? Here's my
yeah,
face.
some of you have
might
seen me in
see
our
on-
schools before.
Right, like, that will carry more weight than it just being like a slide on a PowerPoint or something.
Right, or a letter.
It's
There you go.
meaningful to
Yeah.
them. If it's
Yeah.
meaningful to them, they
Yep.
will do the survey.
Mhm.
You matter. We
Yeah.
say that all the time. But how do you
Show them
matter?
with the survey.
Right, I
Yeah.
want your information and this is how we're gonna get
Yeah.
it. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think that we need to follow up with some,
That's part of how we meet the goal of participation, but
yes,
I think,
Okay.
yes,
So-
I think the goal is the right goal. We're
I
on the right
agree.
path with, that's the right goal, is we need to increase participation. That's just my 2 cents about how we do that.
here's actionable steps that we're gonna take that we hope will increase. Now, let's see if it does. I like that.
I think it's a lot of
Little, like,
thoughts. I live with
it's
3 of
like when
them.
Dennis did the little video snippets that were like a minute
Yeah,
long, they put them on
about the
Facebook
budget.
and different things, like,
Yeah.
it'd be like. Little
And I
snippet.
think if we do it right before in their advisory that it's being presented to them, if that's the intro
play the video?
before they take the survey,
Mhm.
Wow.
then it has an impact.
Is that where they do the survey?
I think so, most likely,
I was just thinking on Facebook, but that's far more direct.
because I think they do it during school.
We have to provide an opportunity. in
Yeah.
school.
So
And then they
I'm just
also have
assuming that
opportunities
would be the
later.
advisory.
I believe so.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I
That's
don't
fine.
know how long it takes either. For them to do it.
Yeah, yeah.
Like their
'cause it is
advisories are
quite a
short,
few.
so it might be a couple.
Okay, so I do like that.
So if this is more operational as far as how we meet the goal, but if it is broken up and there are sections of that, which I would need to look at that survey again, but it's like, if we're looking at these specific questions for safety, like I would almost have a separate video. Today, we're, we're gathering information about safety and present that portion of the survey with our video, and then maybe even some of our vision is in that video.
Yeah, maybe.
And then we do belonging and that, like, the survey is not break up exactly like that, but
And I don't know if you can jump around to questions like that either.
yeah, it would have to be more like
Mhm.
how the survey is laid out would play into that, but
I think that our best course for this would be to say, we're gonna establish baseline data
Mhm.
and really be clear about the vision that we're casting over specifically the seed data. So something that's gonna require some investigation from district staff to flush out for next year, because how does that data come back from the state? Is it demographically and grade oriented? Because if it is, then our goal could be a representative sample, which means demographic matters as well. We want it to reflect our student population accurately,
Mhm.
like,
Mhm. I
so,
would imagine it will be, but.
yeah.
So
Based on
you're
how they-
required to provide it. They've done it, just to refresh my memory. We don't have any results
Right,
and we don't know when we're gonna get results.
right. I've heard fall, so I
But-
penciled
but-
it in for
but-
October.
when
So
did they do it?
Spring, and then it was required for summer programming if we did, because we did the grant.
okay, but it's a requirement by the state and they provided not 1 ounce of detail as to what you might expect, not an ounce.
Required, it's not a required survey, it's required that we offer it.
Right, no, I
Yeah,
know, I understand.
yeah.
Okay, that, I would like
Not
to,
that I've seen, like I could go dig, but,
no.
Yeah,
but.
But it's identifiable to the students, right? Meaning, if a student took it in the spring, it's not all aggregate. It's not so aggregated that a student could have taken it in the spring and in the summer, and those 2 responses are rolled up as if they're 2 separate students.
Right, I believe it was administered, and I would need to check with summer folks, but so when a student takes any kind of statewide assessment and it was connected to that work, you log in as you.
Your name.
Because
Probably
that's how
student
they
ID.
collect the demographic information. So I don't think you could take it twice.
Probably through a
I
student
don't
ID
know.
number.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. So, so let's dive into that one specifically. I think our draft goal would be establish baseline participation and response data for the seed survey.
Mhm.
Is our academic year 24-25 goal.
Should we be typing that in there as you're saying it?
Probably.
I have the Word doc open. So, or I have the Google Doc open, not that.
And me too. Okay, so,
Say it again.
sit.
And hold on.
I'm
though.
typing,
Oh,
I'm
you're
typing.
And I was like, I started, and I'm like, I did not catch what he
So,
said.
establish baseline participation.
Oh, she's not ready. She's not ready.
Yeah, now establish
Baseline
baseline.
participation.
And participation data for the seed survey. That's draft for 24-25. So that's draft current. Then vision.
Okay, where am I going now?
Where are you typing?
I know, I didn't see that pop
I'm
up.
just
But
typing
it's
in my
here.
notes, so I don't.
I'm on board goals.
Hit enter.
Oh, you have to hit enter, or nobody's gonna see it until it's,
Okay,
Ta-da! Okay, so it's
Oh,
an opportunity. We'll
here.
scoot it
if
up.
somebody's
Yeah,
typing in
it
it,
just
it
shows
won't
a box.
show until you hit enter.
Okay,
Okay, so then vision would be,
so where's the vision? Oh, I'm just doing.
well.
I would
let's-
maybe move this up to this
yeah,
right here,
Put
6.
that one in
Oh.
C6. Maybe.
Jeez. Oh boy,
Oh, doing it on. iPad.
yeah,
Do you want me to move it?
I think she's better.
up here
Yeah.
is 6.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, now vision,
Okay, so
Let's-
then vision, I would do just next.
To the right of that.
H6.
not in this box.
No, so do it right here.
Oh,
Yeah.
vision, yes, Blake, continue.
Uh. Something about,
Something about.
Well, isn't
we
it-
want to improve,
Isn't it this?
well, I think there's an intermediate step and that's
Okay.
improved participation or. Improve is such a terrible word in this case.
Well,
because what we
and
want
for
is-
vision, we don't need that. Like the vision is that we
Increase and not improve.
gather
Increase.
representative data that
Representative
includes a wide age demographic range of our students, all of those things, right?
Increase.
That would be our
representative
We
data,
want to improve participation or,
increase representative data.
yeah, sustain, improve participation. Yeah. Yeah, you guys have a better.
Well, did I hit return?
Well, it would be helpful to me because I'm gonna put this on the document to like really,
Tracy, if you can do this quicker than I can.
I'm just wondering if this is year 1 and this is year 2.
Mm,
Does that help? So increase representative data is
And
the
then
year
you
1
would go,
goal.
and then H3 would be the year 2 goal, improve response data on questions, blah, 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 right?
yep,
All right, and we can
Like
change
this.
that, but that's a beginning of that, right?
yeah. That, I think that's what, yeah.
So first, we get participation from a representative group. And then we increase the response.
And those two could really be in tandem.
Mhm.
They don't necessarily have to be.
just for the sake of this and visually for the board members, do we put a third column that says year 3, 4, and then to be determined by after baseline data?
I think I'm gonna adapt this and put it into our document
Okay,
where I say what
Okay.
it pertains to,
okay.
and I'll figure out how to do
So
it.
we'll leave it all here, but then you'll somehow incorporate it into your
pull from it.
document, okay?
Well, is this really year 0?
Yeah, it kind of is.
Mm,
So then that makes sense. you know, this C through G is year 0,
Uh-huh,
H is year 1.
Yeah,
So
You-
year 1 is actually 25, 26, and year 2 is actually.
and you could also move those, you could almost move those down to line 3 and put an extra line above the first draft goal and mark year 0 there, 24, 25. Like it would be the new C3. You get it.
that's faster than I was doing.
This is.
I can't do it on this. I know at home,
laptop.
I'm on it.
And my brain is all my synapses.
Merging the thing, yes.
Sarah's over there on the ivory tower with like 15 monitors.
I know. Here we are.
The tabletop.
Um,
Yeah,
That's
perfect.
for my neck
Like,
pain. I'm looking to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then you get home and you're like, oh,
so then,
It's got different fonts, so that's fine.
you know what, it's gonna be okay because I'm going to put them into a document.
it's really bad when you do too much formatting before the document's complete, because then you add it.
Then it changed it, yeah.
Totally
So
changes
this
it.
line essentially
Problem.
go,
Yeah,
I
that's
like that.
right?
Oh, sure.
Except-
I'm gonna just,
The work section.
I'll just, and that's just kind of where I, it's totally up for.
Every time I look at it.
Okay.
I see something.
Okay, so let's talk about that row 4, reliable baseline major incident data. What we really want, and this is Tracy, if you have good ideas,
Mhm.
I think what we want there is an alignment, some measure that reflects alignment between the student disciplinary handbook and referral data. Like we.
Which draft goal are you talking about?
One of the
Beginning.
Yeah,
So,
and that's basically, so what I penciled in here, because it had said, this one had said data, right? And so I was like, no, we need to talk about discipline handbook rollout. We have new incident reports. We've done training on that. We need to kind of give that like foundational update.
Which is
Probably
happening,
early in the year.
but that's happening with the retreat, or that's not what's happening.
Not on the retreat.
No, we're doing it with staff. And so what I've proposed, like with safety, is that happens at the September work session. To kind of get
so status update about how the disciplinary. handbook
power
has been rolled
reset.
out, Trained.
Mhm.
I think that's a progress step. To success toward referral date. I think from the board standpoint, I'm not sure what's an appropriate year 0 goal statement
Mhm.
reflecting referral data in the disciplinary handbook.
Mhm.
But I think what we're ultimately wanting is an alignment so that we have fidelity in the data.
Mhm.
So what's the best type of goal statement we can create for year 0? With a vision of improving referral incidents. Like, it's almost
Well-
like right now we want confidence in the numbers that we're seeing and the practices are that they're consistent district wide.
Mhm.
But year 1, we want to see improvement of that.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think something about. Collection being district wide. I think our goal needs to say something about that.
This is all after the fact, but because the discipline handbook was done. But since it was done, the goal is an intentional comprehensive rollout. And isn't that the goal? I mean, it's like, we already know it's coming, but it is still pertinent to put in here because we know it's happening. And if it wasn't happening in all of my data research on safety, it was the one thing that I was gonna demand. So it's now already happening, but it still should be reflected as a goal, because it's important.
Yeah, I think
Not
it's,
just create a handbook. What's the rollout? What's the training? What is, can't remember the verbiage they used, but
So what about this? What if?
clear, very clear processes for reporting.
This goes
Yeah,
here.
that's what I think the goal statement needs to be about the collection of the data and the reporting of the data. That's the board goal. The handbook's already there. Our goal is how is it being collected and reported district wide?
yeah, I like that. So, yep, that makes sense, because then we had a cart and a horse in reverse order a little bit, like you were saying. Yep. But in practice, we would say we want, we want accurate reporting, reduction of major referral qualifying incidents.
But that's year one. In year zero, we want to establish clearly defined processes that everybody understands what's being reported and everybody's on the same page. There isn't one person in our entire district that doesn't understand exactly what we're doing, you know, the purpose of it, the
How
why,
they're doing it.
and how they're doing it, and how they're reporting it.
And I think that's in a vacuum, that would be, the district would receive our goal to reduce those incidents and have accuracy in reporting, and they would say, reverse planning. Okay, strategy is we're gonna have a student disciplinary handbook. We're gonna plan our practices district-wide. Like, it wouldn't really be a board goal. It would be a district practice pursuing that board goal. Kind of what I'm saying, but in a way, we're taking what we've heard from Tracy and saying that's our year zero goal. But really, year one is probably the appropriate board goal. It's kind of what we're getting all towards.
Well, the zero though is, what is the data that we want to see? No, it's a confirmation that there is a process through which reporting is going to happen.
I think
I think
those
that's
could
an
be two
okay-
different goals.
They are two different. The
Okay.
first one is setting up for the second one's success.
Because even if we had not just created a brand new handbook, I mean, we know that that's happened. And when I say we, definitely, we were not creating the handbook, but as a district, right? So even if we had the old handbook, our goal is still that the reporting is consistent and,
And our practices are one.
right. So we still need that as a goal regardless of what the
Yep.
handbook ever will be, right?
Well, so what if we just take away,
And
like
then-
you were saying, take
And then
away the
another
handbook,
goal.
right? Is
Yeah.
that kind of what you were saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
Cause regardless of what our
Consistent, what did
handbook
you say?
ever is.
Consistent and aligned
what did I say?
practice. Aligned.
Yeah, district-wide,
Aligned.
District-wide, yeah.
Disciplinary.
I would say, yeah, reporting and what was the other? Collecting and reporting. How we collect that
Yes.
and how we report it are
Yes.
both things that we want done with Fidelity and district-wide. Regardless of what our handbook ever is. And then another goal would be to improve that referral data. Like, I think that's a separate.
Yes, and the only thing
In year zero.
the only thing I
I
would
think
add,
it's a separate
Tracy,
goal
is
entirely.
between aligned and disciplinary, it should be district-wide.
Aligned. Consistent and aligned.
District-wide, just, I guess it doesn't, just disciplinary collection.
Aligned.
Yeah.
Or move it to the end of that sentence. Maybe.
And I also wouldn't write the word accurate, but I don't know what I would put there. I think the word accurate implies that it was previously inaccurate, and I don't want to imply that. So I would write, establish code in my process to provide,
And does that part need to even be there? Like I
maybe
started
not,
that
maybe not.
and then I,
Let's take it away and see that.
Because I don't want to imply that it was previously inaccurate. That's. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
So I think that's one goal. And then I don't think we go with that year to year one and say referral data. I think referral data is a different goal.
like this one comes down here.
Because implementation of consistent and aligned disciplinary collection and reporting practices district-wide, that has to do with more than just referrals, right? That has to do with room clears. That's a broader goal than just referral data. Right?
For
There could
this?
be different indicators,
Well, room
I
clear is not.
think we talked about room clears would be a monitor and not a goal.
but it could be a monitor for that goal. Like, it wouldn't just be referral data that would inform us on that goal.
Is this what you're saying, Holly? Like, so this is what we just said about implementing is line 4, but then moving year 1 and 2 from over here
Down to a separate
to
goal.
a separate goal here and here.
Yeah.
I just don't know, because this is an implementation year, I don't know that this is going to. Like, we're gonna have different, our plans have different checkpoints throughout the year to
Yeah.
do more calibration, so I don't know that the data this year is really going to. Like,
But it's how
be
you're
ready
implementing it, so I
for
think
that
year
next step.
one would be, are you talking about on line
Yeah, so
seven,
maybe
line
move it
7
to
or
year
line
one.
4?
That's why I
Seven.
think these fit up here, or these two things can happen here. Based on preliminary
But
data.
you're saying it's just the goal to have district aligned practices is always gonna be there, years 1, 2.
And I don't
So
think it just
really-
relates to referral data. I think it's broader than that,
Yep. Yeah,
because
But
reporting,
we need to
collection
separate
and re-
discipline and behavior, though. Like, when you're talking about room
I
clears,
agree.
that's not necessarily
agree.
disciplinary.
I'm thinking of safety more in general, so I don't think I
You wanna
would say
point it?
disciplinary, I think I would say. Because I'm also thinking about like, if we have, if we have. A a school threat. Like how we're collecting that information and reporting that, I want that to be consistent
That's gonna be
and
something
aligned
separate
across
from
schools.
this.
So I think it's more than just disciplinary to me. That's why I think the referral should be a separate goal,
So-
where this should be a broader safety goal. This is consistent and aligned collection and reporting of safety information.
What if these
Or,
go back
what
up
do you call them?
here to keep this one about discipline, and then there's a new safety baseline about?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, it
well,
doesn't
and
matter
then
which one
there's
comes
something-
first.
I also just to, Ollie's point, maybe I'm missing this, but I'm almost thinking like. Those are on a new line. But we might not have a year 0 goal, because they're nested, but they're
Which ones?
like, almost like you'd have. It's sharp, you'd have a goal. You know, one, and that specifically is talking about implementation.
I mean, darn it.
There you go.
And so this,
Do we need to take a quick recess?
I might take this.
so now we've got there, and it's gonna also have there, and it's might be here and here. But I'm wondering if that's like, oh, difference.
Goal 2, regular attendance. When you say goal 1 and goal 2, are you talking about the first one listed and the second one
Goal,
listed?
goal 1 would be under 4. And. But I think I might have got.
Well, and I probably confused the situation. I just don't want our goal to be specific to just referral data, because I don't think referral data in and of itself encompasses safety. So I want our safety goal to be broader than that, or to have it separate from referral, or to have the referral be a monitoring.
Physical safety, that's not just.
Because that's more disciplinary, not safety. I mean, it is part of it, right? But it's not broad enough to me to be a goal for safety.
How would, and this is. How would. Against building.
I mean, we should know that. It should be consistent.
So that's where I'm wondering, so on this list, there is a district safety committee that meets quarterly. So that's where like the building, like, that's where the room clears, like the total room clears, like, let's talk
Yeah.
about like some of the patterns and things that are happening. Kind
I
of,
think also it's, you know, weapons on.
Yeah, I mean, I threw out room clears, but I'm thinking just broader terms of safety, physical safety
Mhm.
mostly.
So if it's a weapon on campus and it's a student, that will show up in discipline data, right?
That's a
if
major
it's-
referral.
As a major referral, right?
Okay.
And so there are categories in the incident reports or the referrals
Okay.
that would account for that.
Okay,
Physical aggression would pop up there, so a fight would pop up
Yeah.
on that, but some of the other kinds of safety things, not necessarily. Change from the cells that you were in.
so do you think referral data in and of itself is broad enough, or do you think that's
I
too
think
restrictive?
I think
as far as
referral data
safety
will
in
give us a
general.
variety of categories. I'm trying to think of where I have like a copy of the referral.
Which is, that's new right now, right? With
Yeah.
the handbook.
Let's see. I think in here.
Yeah, I just wonder if it should be. If we should have two goals, one goal would be about the consistent collection of data and reporting
So like
as far as
this
safety
is
general, and
the
then another one would be
new,
about
this
the
is the,
actual data.
this is the new incident form. So this is middle and high school. So we can sort the data by these like broader categories. So if you, like you mentioned weapons, or if there's something about physical aggression. So our referral data is presented in this way. If there's things, you know, broader than that.
I think we would to. I think they're tied together in my head in the same way that
Well, this is good to see.
the
I mean,
one we
that-
just talked
Well-
about is, and I think.
Yeah,
What we want to do is cast a vision where the board might want to isolate types of incidents.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah, this is good, because I hadn't seen.
So,
this
well, and
before.
that's where I was saying, I think the September meeting might actually be like, here's some of the tools we're using right
Mhm.
now. Here's the new form,
Mhm.
right, that aligns, and it's like on the back of it. There are definitions of what those different categories are. So this is the PD we did with admin when they came back earlier in August. That then they're gonna do next week with their staff. So I feel like that is what kind of helps set the baseline. That's this to me. Is us kind of setting that baseline with all of our staff. And then when you're implementing anything, people are gonna wrestle with it in different ways,
what does
right?
the K-5 one look like?
What was that one that we just looked at?
That was
Middle and sixth level. Okay.
behaviors.
What's 5's behavior?
Protected class, like, could be
Oh, okay,
ritual, could
okay.
be
Yeah.
sexuality.
So,
I don't know, up here, here's the definitions. They're just on the back of it.
Yeah, so this might be,
Finding and, okay, so physical aggression, if it's two kids. Okay, that's interesting.
So, and this was recreated to align with the discipline handbook.
okay.
That's why I
Good
feel
to
like that reset in the fall, so everybody gets to see this as kind of that foundation for
okay,
the referral data, discipline handbook, those things. That's still not room clears. That's still not some of the other safety
Mhm.
things. But I think this would be we're investing a lot of time in this work with our building,
Mhm.
so it feels like that's
Yeah.
a good
It could be, though,
foundation
right?
setting.
A room clear behavior could be a disruption. Or is it treated completely different?
It could be, I mean, it's gonna depend on the situation.
So depending on the situation, that's where I think the question comes up. How align?
Right.
How can the
Is the
board
collection-
confirm alignment of practice so that the data we're getting from school A is the same as school B? And we can truly start setting.
because my other concern in looking at that, like the high school one had inappropriate language. I can with very firm confidence say that referrals are not being written for inappropriate language. I'm not saying never, but they're not being written every
But-
time
but
inappropriate
that's
language,
part of-
nor should they.
That's part of the implementation though, right? Some of that is then principals, like we
Yeah.
do these table talks, like you bring your stuff, we talk through it. We did a little bit of that at the beginning of the year. But until people start to implement, we don't know where people are getting stuck. And so, I mean, that is a big piece of that. And all of this stuff is very subjective. Right? It's going to be by nature.
Yeah, I think
because
it's,
and our discipline handbook is laid out that way in terms of the different things to consider as you're deciding. So,
I think what I,
yeah, I guess what I
but
wrestle
that's
with is
where it feels like we're getting way too far
Yeah.
into operations, honestly, in terms of like what our incident form looks like.
Well,
how
and I think
that's-
the reason for that is because it affects the data we receive as a board.
Mhm,
So, because we don't really know what we're looking at if we don't know how it's being collected,
mhm.
right? And so that's why, for me, our board goal is about how it's being collected. And those are different to me. The discipline side is different to me than the collection of the data, right? Inappropriate language happened. How that principal handled it could vary.
Mhm.
And that's not necessarily being reported to us, but that it happened is the collection that, to me, should be more system-wide.
And how any staff member in our district addresses that
Right.
is. gonna
But
be
what is
different.
our district expectation? Is the a district expectation that it's reported regardless of how it's handled? Or is it that it's reported if you feel like reporting it, only if you have to take extra step to handle it? I guess that's my question. So I agree. The handling of it, the discipline side is like varies widely by student, by school, by principal, by situation, by circumstances, like
Mhm,
all the things, right?
mhm.
But in order for the board to see the different things that exist or that are happening in our schools without being in the hallways, right?
Mhm.
Would be that the reporting is consistent regardless of how it's handled after, in my mind.
yeah, and to like back it to the strategic, because I know this conversation is dynamic. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
understand the operations
Mhm.
because
Yeah, to
we're
understand
trying
how
to
it's
figure out what the
collected.
right goal statement is at a
Mhm.
strategic level. Because what we want to be able to say to the community when they say like,
Yeah,
our school safe? You know, is the school that I'm gonna send my kid to safe?
Mhm.
Like, if it's not being reported, then what we're telling them is really squishy.
is we don't know. We're
Yeah.
telling them we don't know if we're being honest.
But I think that the purpose in sharing like kind of where we're at is so that you can say, our district has a new discipline handbook. They're working hard to, implement, they've updated things. There's like this retraining that's happening this year so that we're working towards more consistent data. That is right? It's about that it's showing you evidence of what we're doing to help build that context for you. So when you are talking to the public, you can say, I've seen the things that they're doing operationally to work towards having accurate data for us to look at to, help us be more informed.
What if the goal is, because now we see the definitions. What if the goal, we point to reduce referral incidents, not referrals? We want to reduce the incidents that qualify. Like, what if we just focus the board's efforts there?
Okay.
As defined, in the disciplinary handbook, because those referral things would be in the disciplinary handbook.
Those are fine.
So that's defined by the disciplinary handbook. What if we focus there and then the fidelity of the information is on the district staff to ensure that they're getting an alignment of practices on them? What we're looking at is reducing the incidents to make kids feel unsafe.
And to close the loop
Okay.
in terms of accountability to our families and students, the loop is, here's what they're doing to get here.
Mhm.
And if we don't get here within a certain period of time, we're gonna evaluate that and say, it's not working, district, you need to do something different. That's the accountability part. That whether we dictate what the things are that you do, we do and should and can dictate that it isn't working, you need to go back and regroup. Because ultimately, we want to reduce the incidences. And so, it's not just enough to say, oh, no, boy, they have a plan. You know what I mean? There's
Absolutely.
gotta be a loop closure somewhere.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm not implying that none of those things are being done. I mean, language is I don't necessarily think a referral even maybe should be written for.
And sometimes it's
So, yeah, so I'm not saying,
It's a big
Certain words
picture.
should be reported.
It's
that in context
It's a,
matters.
Yes.
it's a total picture
So, I mean,
of
I just threw that as an example,
Yeah.
right? My thinking is more along the lines of the reporting and the discipline and where our goal goes for that.
Mhm.
Because it's hard to set a goal based on inconsistent reporting. And I don't mean inconsistent to be misleading, but inconsistent as far as different schools, different principals, it's just being reported differently based on circumstances, based on situation, student, blah, 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 blah. So if there was some way where we can get apart from that nuanced part of it
Mhm.
and focus on the collection, the collection of the data, regardless of the discipline. To me, that, like, in my mind, that gives me a better picture of like, okay, these are all the things happening in our school.
Mhm.
And then that's separate from how they're being handled. It's just what's happening. This is a clear picture of our schools today. These things are going on this many times in each school. It takes the personal circumstance, all of that out of it. Just these things happened, period. And then a separate goal. And that's why, to me, I think it was separate. Like, the collecting and reporting is one goal. And then, because I don't want to tie that necessarily in my mind to how it's handled, because I think that is so circumstantial. So that to me is a different goal. That's, I think, why I separated those two in my mind. That helps explain my thinking, I guess.
So just a time check for 10:15, and do we want to get this
Mhm.
sheet?
Buttoned up.
What's that?
Yeah, we need to get it buttoned up.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just throw that out there.
So the questions we're asking are, should it be separate? So Holly, would you see implementation of consistent aligned disciplinary collection reporting just is what you're getting at, that you would see that sustaining in year 1 and 2? It's set its own goal, that there's really not a,
That we just work on, the goal is just to implement it, make it consistent. And report it consistently.
yeah, I mean, that's a tricky goal anyway, because it's really not a measurable practice.
Well, yeah, I think it's one where we would have to get baseline, like. In year 0, or whatever we're calling it, year 1. The data that I would expect to see is. On that referral form, we can use the referral form still. But not necessarily the discipline side of it, not what happened, or not how we're handling students or the tiers or any of that, just what happened in each school by grade,
But that doesn't measure implementation.
No, but isn't the implementation that you have, you have a
It's more
process,
like
and then every teacher has been trained? Is that not a goal
so it's
for
gotta be
that?
yes, no, reported by the district.
Say that again.
It's really a yes, no, but it's a pass fail. That's like, to
Well,
me, it's a
the-
pass fail reported by the district about its practices. Yes, we've implemented an aligned, or no, we haven't. Because I don't know what measure we can, unless you're saying like, we want to set a goal for staff hours. I think would be it would be appropriate.
No, but it's the integrity of the data and the trust of the community. When they have a plan and they're working towards that plan.
I
That doesn't
think
say
the
anything.
measurable would maybe be
But if
the
they have.
PD that you're doing with
created
staff.
Process, and everyone has been trained.
to train them on the
And there
handbook.
is a follow-up as to whether or not everybody is following the training, that we have those measurements, we have those targets in place. That's more definitive to me.
So as a. This might help and this might not. So implementation of a consistent disciplinary collection process is part of PBIS. Each school does a PBIS fidelity assessment. It's not just about referrals, though. It's about how are you incentivizing kids? It's about, do you have, you know, clear expectations? Do you have a discipline matrix? And so what I'm wondering if that becomes a supportive data point around implementation. Schools have done that for 2 years.
Yes, and when you say, do you have a disciplinary matrix? Is our disciplinary handbook not the overlay to each teacher's disciplinary matrix, or are they creating their own?
It's an expectations matrix. So it's like in the hallway, here's the expectations for the hallway. In the bathroom, here's the expectations for the bathroom.
Right, but the teacher creates that individually.
The school does.
Okay, so, but they
It's
are
the
not,
little posters you
they're
see.
not universal district-wide.
Mm-mm.
No, because they focus on different words each year or every 4
Or
years.
different
or
things
every-
they need in their school.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay, well,
Or
I think
we-
yes to the
yeah.
PBS. Isn't it?
Shoot, I'm so late in my boardsmanship. I'm just gonna ask this question. Do we have an audience?
We did earlier, we do not now.
Okay,
Did we have?
here's the concern I have.
I don't.
My concern is the staff perception that's been shared with me, that every time a student misbehaves, the question is, well, how did you engage them? And I want to steer clear of that, because that does not align with what I hear from our community as far as where the challenges really are.
We should have
And
put safety
so-
as our last goal, because it's always.
Yeah, so as we're talking about this, though, my concern. Yeah, I don't know how to crack this nut, because I fear and feel that our. Yeah, we're ultimately gonna be like, well, let's talk about student engagement. When. Yeah, that's not the spirit that I'm approaching it with, even if that's a strong institutional practice. I don't hear that desire from the community, and that's what I'm supposed to.
And I think with PBIS, I'm saying more about in terms of have we laid out clear expectations for kids and done our part for teaching them what those expectations are? You still need a response system, which is what the incident report or referral is. I'm just trying to help us have a measure of how do we look at how we're implementing?
Okay, so is that then two different measurements? Is the first one, is it well thought out? Is everybody trained? Do we have all these things in place? Yes or no? And two, then it's the response to the incidences when they occur. Even though, I mean, kids, the expectations are clear, and we're still gonna have kids that, don't follow that. So then the second one is, what's the response to those? And are the numbers going up or down? Which would then tell you whether the first part's tangible enough, meaty enough, working enough, or is it? Does that make sense?
I want our goal to measure how we're implementing, and I don't know how to do that, but that's what I want our goal to be. I wanna know, I want our goal to be that we are implementing it consistently. And district-wide. I don't know how we measure that is the problem. Because unless you're in this, I mean, we say referral data. But we're all knowing that is different.
So sometimes what we would do is look at, so we've collected some referral data and we see that Gordon Russell and Clear Creek State is really different. Like, we then need to ask questions about why is that data so different?
Yeah.
And that's where some of that calibration can kind of happen.
So the board wouldn't traditionally get that information,
Right,
because it would be operational.
Right.
right.
Yeah. I mean, if we leave it open-ended now, we can say safety is really hard, so let's move on. But the reality is then tonight at 10:30 PM,
When we're
I'm
laying
gonna
in
be
bed.
sitting there like this. Holy crap. That's it. And on Friday, we're gonna be looking at the.
We don't know. Yeah, it's
And
hard.
so. Let's know we have to circle back to it. Let's try to move to opportunity. And then let's get back.
Are
to-
we, so right now are these others
Well,
still
talk regular attendance. Can you tie that to safety for me again? Just if kids are in school, they're gonna be,
willingness to come to school?
oh, at the willingness.
Yes, because
Okay.
that's one of the main reasons is they don't, if they don't feel safe. Yeah.
Got it. Okay, are we prepared, because we do know regular attendance rates? Are we prepared to propose an improvement trajectory
For attendance?
For attendance, meeting as a board, are we prepared to say a collective of 50%, right? Because you said it.
It's like 40,
Or, yeah,
50.
Okay,
low 60s. It was actually up a little bit last year.
that's the collective.
Mhm.
Okay, so maybe,
Well, and you could do it by level, right? I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
it's different, like it's a really, in attendance is super interesting.
Mhm.
Kindergartners and 12th graders have the worst attendance.
For
But
very
I think
different
this is
reasons, I bet.
another good example, you asking like,
Kindergarten.
what does attendance have to do with safety is part of the, like, how all those pieces fit together. Like, attendance is a piece of that. The incident data or the referral data is a piece of that. The seed survey is a piece of
Yeah.
that. So when we look at
Which is what you were
safety, it's
talking
that
about. It
whole
has to- I agree.
collective.
Yeah.
Because we can't say that attendance is the best measure of safety. It gives us information about safety potentially, but it also gives us information about belonging and achievement.
yeah, I think because of that, for us, it's not the best reflection of safety.
Mhm.
It's not the best reflection of opportunity. It's not the best reflection of achievement. It probably is one of the best for belonging.
Mhm.
Kids will show up where they want to be.
Mhm.
And families will send their kid where they want them to be. So I think,
In listing that, well, at least with attendance. Belonging would be the primary, and then the others are ancillary to the primary. I
Mhm.
mean, if we can show that
so
somehow.
maybe yeah.
I do think that it gets a little bit confusing in my mind because we have goals to our goal, essentially, like, I know we're not following those goals, but what's in blue is ultimately our we've reached it goal, right? The other goals are really progress goals.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
Because 70% attendance or whatever we want to put it at is not our end goal. Our end goal is that kids are safe
Yeah.
and feel safe.
Mhm.
So those are, we're gonna have multiple progress goals because that's where we can see success along the way. They're not siloed as goals.
But-
Safety is the goal.
But we want attendance to be durable enough that
Yeah.
if we say it here, we want to see that plan to grow
Yes,
for 5 years.
yes.
Is the only place where we list the attendance goal in terms of a number in belonging? And then we just acknowledge on the sheet that, they will feel safer? Or it's an indication of them feeling safer when they show up, but it's not, you wouldn't lose the set, you know what I mean? Does that make sense? And that the achievement is that when kids come to school more, they do better on their grades. It's not a number that we list there. I don't know, that might have just. been it.
I think almost in my head, it's that,
I've got a note. I think I'll play with how we format it and make sure you guys are updated when I get that.
yeah, I think it's just how my brain is. We have these 4 goals: safety, opportunity, belonging, achievement. All of our other progress goals, as I'm now calling them, we have them separated out. I don't know that we need to have them separated out because we're saying we're gonna put them under multiple. So we have 4 goals, we have 12 progress measures, And then we have, this is what these progress measures are gonna indicate, that's where it ties back to this. It's gonna indicate that kids feel safe, it's gonna indicate that they belong, it's gonna indicate. Is kind of how I'm seeing it, does that make sense? Are my hands explaining this in the air? correctly?
Yeah. I think there's. I think there's value in trying to align them with those. You know, conditions or whatever. Because as a practice, that's how the board's gonna see everything that it sees.
Mhm.
But I do wonder about, yeah,
And maybe we're just overthinking it.
I'm sure of that.
Well, and also because each of us are. It's just formatted differently in each of our brains, and that's probably gonna be the case with other board members too, and so. I don't know that there is one best way, as long as we all have the same understanding. Of where we're going,
And I do think maybe start with one that's really concrete.
just not safety.
I mean, for the
Yeah.
whole board, just to get a
Uh-huh.
feel for how,
The process,
how the process kind of works and what it.
Yeah,
I agree.
so, yeah, so under opportunity, fine with the seed survey. Because there are specific questions pertaining to the seed survey or to opportunity. With the, I've seen about the. Participating APCTE, the core extracurricular activity. The only issue I have there is now with universal AP. I think we need
Everyone
to pull that one.
participates.
I think we pull AP and we look at CTE. Core extra.
And I got some feedback from Tim, so it'd really be the things that we can pull from that are tied to a class or a course. So we could pull that data from Synergy. So we could pull CTE classes, we could pull the extracurriculars that are like band or choir,
Drama.
speech, that we might not have some other club, but it would at least be a starting point to rely on.
Okay, so just extracurricular CTE. Wait, isn't band and speech are those extra or co-curricular?
Well,
They're
they're course, it's how
Zero
are
period.
we,
They're marked on their schedule as a 0 period.
if it's in their schedule, we can easily pull the data for some of those categories.
But we can't do that for athletics. or something.
Athletics isn't in there in the same way. It would just take a lot more work at the school level.
Well, the athletic
Possibly float
directors
it
have
in
it, it's just
addition.
not in Synergy.
And it's repeat students and
Yeah.
it's like, so synergy, we can pull some reports that help make that clear.
And I think it would be worth a conversation. You know, cause I don't wanna not do it because of the assumption that it would just, you know, take so much. I'd like to at least have a conversation about what it would take. Sure, there's a lot of. First year implementation, but once it's set up and they just fill in the numbers, then it would be a little bit easier.
Well, and it depends on, like, we're gonna have to define what those things are.
Mhm.
Like, it's not just about the sports, right? It's about the other
And
activities
piece of that,
and.
yeah.
Mhm.
yes, absolutely. In
Yeah,
my
there's
view,
clubs
it is so intricately woven to a sense of belonging for the
Mhm.
kids that don't have it in class. It just seems like it's gonna be
Well, and we know it
critically
affects
important that at
attendance.
some point we
mean,
are ready to.
I
do that.
specifically, I have. Over the last 20 years of my husband coaching, have had multiple times where parents or students text me and say, how many classes does my kid need to be at in order to participate in the game
Mhm.
today? Like,
Mhm.
so that's definitely affecting attendance, right? Because they weren't gonna come, they were gonna be at an appointment or they were gonna,
Mhm.
whatever. But because they wanna play in that game or that competition or whatever that
Sure.
is, they're attending.
Mhm.
So it's very, I mean, it improves our numbers.
And I think.
It's a positive impact. It will have a positive impact.
Those elements will also allow that data. To be relevant 6 through 12. Because we have CTE pathways in middle school. I mean, less profound than at the high school level,
And different at each
More.
school too.
more co-activity there.
I just. I'm with Kathy. I'd like to explore that burden more and maybe we cast the vision.
Mhm.
Right now, we focus on extracurricular and CTE that are already pullable from synergy.
Right.
But the vision of the board is really, or of this.
Well, and maybe that's year one.
Yep.
Is how can we?
The other thing though, that right now is not to debate the possibility, but to put it up there that is the vision. And then, you know, obviously there's opportunity for the district to say, this is going to be impossible.
Yeah.
But at
Well,
least we have the information.
and there's a lot of overlap, right? CTE kids are in sports, right? CTE kids are in, so then it's like the cleaning of the data too. So I think that's just like, where is our starting place? Is I think the,
I know, but
So,
each student needs a checkbook.
but to my
It's called
point,
the registration.
for
form
today's
the high school.
purpose and discussion with the
Exactly what
board,
you check.
can we put it up there?
Mhm.
And fully note that this is not set in stone because we don't have the input or the how from the district. We want to evaluate whether it stays up here based on the burden of getting the data. I mean, to just have a placeholder.
Mhm,
This is what we're looking for,
mhm.
and we're going to include information.
But I would like to align phrases here, so. Band. Choir,
Choir,
drama,
Speech and debate.
well, speech and debate is not a class then. So
Okay,
that's,
yeah.
those are called extra or co-curricular.
I don't know,
Oh, okay,
honestly.
okay. I would like to label those
I
as
think they get
co-curricular. If they come with a
lumped.
class,
Mhm, that
they're
might be.
co-curricular.
okay?
If they are outside of the classroom, it's extracurricular.
Extracurricular. I think the reason it's muddy is some of those are both.
Some of them are
Like
both.
band is both.
Yes.
Drama is
But
both.
they're co-curricular programs
Mhm.
because they.
They have a
want
class
credits for the
associated.
kids.
Mhm.
That makes.
Jackson speech and debate, it
I mean, marketing,
can be co, right?
yeah.
And
I
is
mean,
it just
but
an elective?
That's DECA is a marketing.
You don't
class,
have
but
to be in,
DECA's
you don't
like-
have to be in DECA
So
to
that's
be
what I
in
mean,
marketing.
that's the both, right?
Mhm.
Cause there's a
Yeah,
marketing
things like
class, but
automotive
some
that's only
marketing
available in
students are
school.
DECA students.
Hmm,
I say, or things
that
like
one's-
automotive, it's only at one high school, right? I mean,
right,
Right.
but
Woodshop's
then
only
that's an
at the
elective,
other.
like that's,
yeah.
it's like.
Yeah.
But
I think
it's
those
still a
are
class.
electives, But if they're aligned with the CTE
That's a
pathway, which
CTE.
they often are,
Yeah,
then that's different.
both of those are in Woodshop too.
So I think what this means is there's probably a presentation down the road for the board. Here's, you know, as it relates to this goal. Here,
And
here's
I-
how, this is how you're gonna get the
Mhm.
information.
And there's a part of me that's still like. Start small and see what that is and then figure out what's missing, like as the layout, as the add-on for layering things on.
Year,
I just
year
think
one,
of the
year
kids
two.
I know, and I think Holly's probably in the same boat. I think of the number of kids I know. Who are at school because of extracurriculars. That we're missing. And I think that level of belonging. I know it's statistically significant
Yeah.
right now.
It-
And
it
so
both
to not
started.
have it is hard.
Well, and
but think
I,
if we can-
But that's the whole purpose behind Sun also, right?
Right.
Sun really monitors
an
participation
extracurricular.
in there and they tie it to attendance. And so does Sun fall in here?
especially
You know, like,
K to 5 and, well,
Okay. Do we need to go on to belonging and achievement, or what do we need to do to finish opportunity?
well, what I like is that opportunity, we have that big bucket. I think what we're missing is the K to 8 level.
Hmm.
And so I don't know if there's any thoughts, immediate thoughts. We can move on about how do we reflect opportunity at the K to 8 level? Is this a place where DLI participation matters to us as a board? And I'm not sure.
yes, but I think it's not representative because of the limited, it's not at all, not nearly all schools, right?
so, but is that what this 1 and 2 is almost like year 1 is let's figure out what's going on with high school and then
then
year
phase
2 is might be like,
Yeah.
okay, is there
Elementary.
something with K-8 that comes in?
Why would we wait?
Well,
We
because we
don't
don't
know.
know what we have.
Well, one of the
And
things
most
is,
of them aren't courses for K-8, right? It
Right.
is gonna
All
be
kids are taking
fun,
this-
it is
No, I know.
gonna be some of
But-
the stuff that's.
we want the awareness, so maybe a K-8 is focusing on the awareness. Awareness of, so what activities do we engage eighth graders or leading up to eighth grade in preparation for high school to their awareness of what's available in high school?
Or it could be in the school. What do we call them? When we get the presentations from the school.
Orientations,
Improvement.
At the elementary level, maybe for year 0, we just want what clubs are available to your kids or what. Just as an information line.
Hmm,
Like the 5th grade family night at the middle school kind of stuff, or like
Yeah,
when
or
the high
like
school
back in
does
the days when
their.
we did have like
Jump
a
rope
jump up
club.
club or
exercise.
here's robotics or,
that,
even
that's a
stuff
great
that
point.
Individual
We
staff.
want
could
them to be
do that.
aware and we have no idea.
Well,
Does
there's just
anybody-
very minimal, I think, for K through 5, it's a
And
lot
it's always
more
so
minimal.
heavily staff dependent.
Yeah,
But it's still the awareness of, could that just be the initial goal? What do we have? What is there? How are we sharing that to our students and families? Is that a baseline?
It could be a principal survey. Right, like,
Well, we don't have to figure out the what.
where the
We're just
district
setting a
surveys the
goal.
principals and asks what they
Mhm.
have at each school. Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, the
And
fact that
even
the
how many
district
kids
might
there
not know.
Well-
How can anybody be aware if nobody really knows?
No, because I think
What's there?
it's very much year to year, like this PE teacher's here and wants to do
Mhm.
this program this year, they're gonna do it this year. Next year it doesn't work in their schedule, they're not gonna do it, like there isn't, I don't.
Isn't like Westo had a
No.
fitness club for a while.
and
No,
it's
Easter
willing,
is-
because it is willingness of staff to do
Right,
those things.
because
Like,
it's
how
not
about
a
you put your
district- it's not a
teacher on the
district-
They're gonna.
At a minimum, when you say that, that's information for the students and the families. This year, you could see different things at the elementary or the 6 through 8 level. And it's because it's staff dependent and who happened to be there. And so it may not stay, but right now, here's the opportunity.
Yeah, I
Isn't
think-
there benefit
I
to even
think-
saying that?
I think parents know that because that stuff that gets communicated through individual school newsletters
Mhm.
and Parent Square and Peach Jar and all of
As long
those
as
things.
that's
You
out
don't
there.
think you're rising to the level.
I don't think it needs to be a goal.
Hmm, okay.
For the board.
Okay.
Because it's not a district implemented, like, we're then setting a goal based on whether a staff member wants to.
And we can't
do
make them do
something,
it.
and we can't make it, we
Yeah.
have no teeth, we have like.
Yeah.
So to me,
Okay.
yes, it's great that families know about it. I think families do know about it based on individual school and what's offered at their own school.
Well, and again, it was just to find something that we
Yeah,
could do as a
Yeah.
baseline, and so that's.
So instead, we're kind of in that exploration phase. As a vision, we know that this goal needs to apply to K-8. Okay, so let's just.
how
move forward.
about, before I forget, the bus? Maybe it's, no, I know it goes to grade school, the tomorrow bus.
Mhm.
Is that a consistently scheduled, rolled out? Like, is it just when schools request it? Does that go to each elementary school twice a year? Like that's an offering a STEAM offering that the district
Mhm.
does.
It's some of both. Like,
Okay,
it's how we meet some different state requirements, but it also is. We're offering this, does that fit with
whatever.
what you're
curriculum
doing? There's some
Okay.
invite that goes along with that.
That's the only thing that just came to mind as far as like a
Mhm.
district thing that every school has access to potentially, right?
Mhm. And a kid's not making that choice, right? It's
No,
not,
the district is.
it's not a
though.
kid opting in, which is what
Yeah,
the
you're right.
opportunity
It doesn't
is
speak to opportunity, it
versus.
speaks to an
Like,
offering.
it is one of the opportunities. It's like
Yeah.
Bright Green
Mhm.
Initiative in all of our elementary schools. That is an opportunity, but kids just do it. 'cause It's built into. what they
Yeah,
do.
although it opportunity, that awareness. Awareness could come from a kid not voluntarily choosing to do something. And awareness could come from a student going into the opportunity with tomorrow
Mhm.
bus and going and connecting. with
Totally.
Something there,
Fascinated.
and then
Yeah,
they
yeah.
choose
Mhm.
something, so I just wanted to
It speaks
say.
to
it loud as
opportunity
well.
in that way, I
Yeah.
agree, yeah.
It creates an
So
awareness.
it might,
that they
so
didn't
then
have.
back to the awareness, is it curating a list of like every
These are
school
the
does
things we-
have an opportunity to access Tomorrow Bus. Every school has
Maybe.
Right Brain Initiative.
Maybe,
You know, and those things, it's not necessarily gonna change over time, but it's part of the experience
I think
that kids.
that's what I'm kind of, here's where I'm at on it. If I were writing this in a vacuum for more like the process, we would have that and we'd see across our schools, you know, X school has these 4 things that engage kids and ideally, here's how many kids participate. And, you know, so across our elementary schools, and we start to identify these gaps year to year. Oh my, you know, by the board collecting that information or requesting that information, now our gaps are identified. And now we have resource considerations.
yes.
And now we want something that's either proposed to us to roll out district-wide for opportunities for elementary kids to keep
Outdoor
them.
school would be one.
You know, it's like that. That to me is the structure to it,
Yes,
but carrying Tracy's, you know, point to it. Right now, we know we have 9 through 12 data that's meaningful. Can we just cast that vision for K to 8 that we really are going to want to look at what opportunities are available at those levels? Not for district balancing like a reduction, but district coordination. Understanding how we leverage resources.
Okay.
It's recorded.
I see your point. My concern is to leave K through 8 out as a future vision. That if we can find something to begin the measurement, I think there's value in that. And I think what Tracy just suggested is, so my first one was, it's not universal, it's rope jumping because we have somebody. But those things, what can be identified that are piquing the awareness and opportunity, passion in a student. And that sounds like it's at least doable. Because the awareness part for staff and district staff is that we're asking you to come up with this list. It means that it's important to us. There's, you know, we're identifying what awareness and opportunity is by saying, have pique their passion.
Well, and
I
that's
think
not
that's
a
at least
difficult
some-
list to come up with for principals of their own individual schools. They know exactly what's happening in their buildings. I mean, I would say off the top of my head, that list would include outdoor school. It would include the Tomorrow Bus. It would include field trips. It would include right brain initiatives. It would include clubs. For the middle school level, it would include sports, athletics. Because now we're offering some more.
I think the other, and this is a monitor. But like volunteer hours within the, because those are tracked.
Yeah,
Maybe
Oh, yeah.
not consistently, but I think. Yeah, I
pretty
think
consistently.
we're getting pretty,
But I think that would give something for K through 8, and I don't think it,
But
I think it
volunteer
speaks
feels
more to
like more like
opportunity,
belonging.
Tracy, than belonging.
Say that again?
I think it speaks more to opportunity than belonging, because
Yeah, that's what it is.
what we're offering is awareness, and what we were talking about is what you mentioned is they don't opt into those things, like everybody just, other than outdoor school or sports, so some of them. So I think that's a belonging and an opportunity thing. The opportunity part is, are they aware that these things are happening? Is the board aware that these things are happening? And then the belonging is on the ones that they do opt into, how many are opting into those? I think it's.
So
kind
are
of
you
both.
saying, okay, so I just kind of, as you were talking,
Yeah.
wrote this, I don't know if that's what.
yeah, I think we can work with that, and I think, I'll alert you when I update this as well. And I would really like you to communicate concern at that point, if
Okay.
you have it. So that we're not flashing something in front of the board that isn't vetted.
No. won't work.
But yeah, I think as an entry, we don't know where that will take us. But it could be enhanced board awareness of opportunities available to elementary and middle school kids. That's the goal. And
And I
that's,
think by school probably, because those are gonna be different.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
and-
DLI would be one for some schools, for sure.
Belonging, we had overlap there. I think that there's some about like, I think there's perspective monitors on facility usage and volunteer hours. That was where I was thinking of belonging. There's monitors that be compelling. Did we have it in there?
Well, I'm looking. No more about staff.
What did we say on student mobility? What were we saying?
We report that annually to the state.
And student mobility, meaning from one of our schools to another school or in and out of our district?
Both.
Okay.
And sometimes that is about belonging and sometimes that's,
Right. They
I mean, that's
job
a hard,
change for a parent and
it's
then
a piece of information
Yeah,
that we
yeah.
have. We definitely have schools that have higher mobility than others. I just was looking back at this because because we worked from this longer list to get to this list.
Exactly.
So I was like,
just
what's
saying that.
missing?
Yeah, I mean, that is what we said. Now we have to put it into statements,
Mhm.
right? And just as a note, we're changing pillar to condition in every place here. Is that right?
Puzzle.
I would agree. I just don't wanna forget in all of our,
Mhm.
sheets.
And I'll summarize this at the end, but my intent is that everything we show the board. We can show them this on a, we can show them this just for like, hey, look at what we did. But what the board sees will be just in that document. And we'll consolidate this
more
information.
refined, yeah.
Although
This is-
I think that it might be important to just in terms of where we've been,
Yes,
that we crafted the conditions. Then we looked at the draft monitors in that one thing, and we used all of those. And the draft monitors was from the district in terms of what they already collect.
Mhm.
And then we tried to, our final suggested monitors are those ideas into statements,
Mhm.
right? So that they see that there was a clear path.
Mhm.
And most importantly, that we took into consideration what you already do.
Mhm. Yeah.
I want to say that.
Mhm.
for achievement. We talked about, the. The core ones, ninth grade on track and graduation rate, but then we talked about maybe, well, I actually don't remember. Why those weren't implemented as a full statement, but I think, the more we wanted to focus on.
Maybe because it was the last goal.
Yeah, and I'm trying to remember. Well, the LGPTs are those key measures from the state, but then we also talked about
Remind me what LGBT stands for.
longitudinal growth performance
Yes.
targets.
Okay, yep.
But then we also talked about like where like Dibbles and some of that I-Ready Star stuff comes in as part of that. This I put here, so I have to do an SIA update and an annual review in November. LGPTs will be a part of that, so that will already happen. And at the same time, I think what we were hearing is that there's also this layer of like, how's our baseline data, like, as we're starting the year, where are we at? So that's in there pretty. Like, this is when we get graduation data. I do, at some point, want to have a conversation about, yes, we can show some different tiered data with Dibbles and I-Ready and Star. But we're also doing a lot of MTSS like, how are we implementing the framework? And so like we've done a different assessment 2 years in a row now with ILT, looking at our implementation of MTSS. Just last week, we did a district capacity assessment for MTSS. So I think there's some other things besides just where we at in the tiers in terms of MTSS implementation. Because it's such a big framework.
And I'd wanna go back, but I don't wanna. But I feel like we asked about the implementation timeline for TNS, when are they gonna be fully implemented, and maybe Kathy.
Well, I think one of the things that,
Years.
Yeah, right.
It said
That's the answer I remember.
it said Tracy will ask Michelle, but I wasn't sure what that was referring to.
But
Is, and this is dangerous because I've really built a pretty solid assurance in my head. MTSS tier data from an academic standpoint that would include already did this star. And so to me, it felt similarly to the seed data, the one-stop shop for the board. It simplifies what the board is looking at.
It shows how students are progressing or where they fall within the framework, but it's similar with the discipline handbook, like, but what are we doing to actually implement it? Because that's its whole thing. So if you're just going to, like, using your example of if we're not showing progress with students, that doesn't necessarily mean that we get rid of MTSS. It might mean that we need to look at what our
I don't see-
implementation
Yeah,
piece
I don't
is.
see MTSS in the chopping block or at all in the deliberations of the board, like. I don't think that's where we would look at.
No,
I think we have sufficient confidence in MTSS, especially from the academic standpoint, where it's more just. Where can we get all the information in a consistent way? And to me, over the 7 years. That and the iReady data in isolation seem to me to stick out as the cleanest. Comparative data sets
Most concrete.
that could show.
Yeah.
Progression or regression over time. Yeah, and so that's why. I hung it on that.
Mhm.
But I also see that you have. You still have reservations, so I feel like I'm not.
Mm,
understanding.
I don't. I think that is very clear, concrete data, but I don't think it's an evaluation of MTSS. I think it's a measure of
Correct.
assessment
100%.
of
Correct.
achievement, right? So
Totally
if we're
correct.
wanting to talk about MTSS and maybe we don't, then there's some other pieces that kind of help with that.
From an academic standpoint. Rather, because the alternative to me is we start looking at STAR. iReady, we look at them in isolation.
yeah.
Do you think it's reasonable to say, let's just look at the MTSS tier distribution? That's gonna tell us, that's gonna give us a snapshot of those.
Those tiers are based on that data, like literally Panorama pulls that data and that's what creates the tiers.
Right, so
Yeah.
there's fidelity. in it.
Yeah.
There's like, I think that's where we stand on the achievement. It pertains K to 5, 6 to 8.
High school is a different kind of.
And it's split demographically.
Yes.
Is there value in expanding the boards? Like, would we want to look at alpha growth targets as a board,
Yes.
independent of MTS?
or is that get pulled? into-
Alpha would be more a part of like when we share more of our OSAS type data, alpha isn't OSAS.
Yeah.
So I think we absolutely have to be looking at how our
I mean,
emerging multilingual.
that's the other one, because you can look at, here's where our 8th graders were, and I know how that's affected strategy. You
Mhm.
adopted a new math curriculum because it just wasn't netting
Mhm.
results.
Mhm.
And so. I think this is where graduation data, cool. I think our role as a visionary board or progressing to a visionary board is really looking at. Those snapshots in time. I think graduation is too reactive. I think it's reasonable. It's appropriate for the board to worry about. But it's not,
Agreed.
it's not meaningful
Along
to
the
say,
way.
we need to graduate 90%, because I think there's so much upstream that is relevant to the board.
Yes.
That we could be focused on instead.
That
Yeah,
will end up
not-
resulting in
not-
them graduating.
Yes.
Right, like,
But Blake, everything that we're doing in terms of these goals is the progression on the continuum, because ultimately it should result in higher graduation
Yeah.
rates. So we are, so it's not that we don't look at those, it's that that's the goal. And here's all of the work that we're doing that we believe will get us there. 'Cause we
And that
can't
will
just look
increase
at
that
that
number.
all of
So,
this.
for example, like where that comes into play for me, when I think about graduation rates, like just looking at the last 2 years of data, yes, we've shown some growth. And where we've really shown growth is with special education students and our emerging multilingual students. Those two groups speak a lot about what's happening with MTSS and achievement for specific groups of students. So the graduation data is important, and would we see some of those same things on some of those other measures before they get there? That would be the goal. So I also think that if we're talking about DIBELS and there's key groups that we want to monitor, and my recommendation would be special education and EMLs, because those are our subgroups that struggle the most, and they're large groups in our district. Then we're also, when we look at DIBELS, we're looking at how are EMLs doing? How are special education students doing? You know, as a part of all of that.
In other
So-
words, MTSS is, it does pull all of that data, but it doesn't give us the small snapshot in where we're seeing success or,
It doesn't extract the strategies that you guys
Yeah,
implement in
right.
order to move that needle,
Yeah.
that
Mhm.
tier distribution. So the question is from a presentation standpoint, so you'll present to us. Well, I guess you're not required to show us already, so really that becomes a
It's gonna be a multiple times a year data point. I think that was part of it, is some of the OSAS stuff is like, this is a one and done thing that happens. And DIBELS and iReady and STAR happen 3 times a year.
Yeah.
So we can look at it in November and see where we're starting the year. We can look at it mid-year and see where we're at. We could look at it again in August and look at how did we do last year, right? And I think that's the value of some of those measures.
the value of seeing them separate.
Okay, and then we talked about scholarship data / just stuff in the tier 1. To show. Opportunity and achievement. For students who might be at risk of not being challenged. And so I think there's data there. I will try to pull together what I've heard. And. Distribute that document to you guys. What I hope it will look like. Is the framework document that I started. I will have. Another page on there. That will be like a table. Of goal statements. Current and future, or current and kind of draft vision. And what condition they apply to. Then I will have a separate table that identifies condition, what goals align under those. And so that will be more of an indexed picture. And then I will have a calendar. And show which go where. That'll be adapted from what Tracy's already done.
Yeah, that's a lot.
But I also committed to it, so. Follow through.
And then I will just do my history
If you work on the history part of it,
and I will get that to you
and
for
we'll figure out.
review.
It's dangerous to have you present, but if you need help formatting, then I'm happy to help do that.
Well,
Yeah, I mean, I can do it too, because
well, I
your
think,
board secretary, that's part of my job too.
I just don't feel like we have. I don't think this is a launch ready
Yeah,
document, is why I feel like I need to stay engaged in it. But I will say, Sarah, what might end up happening is I send you like 3 different Word docs and somehow it's either
Compiling, yeah. I
Nice.
can do it.
Work on that. Turn on a fun documentary and chip away. I'll distribute to you so that you can do it at the.
And I might try to do mine sooner than later, so you can look
That'd be
at
helpful.
and give me feedback, because I don't wanna say the wrong thing, I don't wanna miss anything. And mine's pretty high level, but
That'd be helpful.
Or send it to you Thursday evening, right before
I'd love to
the
get
retreat.
this. I'd love to get
it's
this to
Wednesday, for
you.
God's sake.
No, today's Tuesday.
It's Tuesday.
It's Tuesday.
Stop it. It's like, don't talk about it.
You just gave me a heart attack,
Yeah.
just like that.
Today's Tuesday.
Yeah, so my goal is to get you something, let's say 80% tonight,
Hmm.
and I'd love just your review and your, hey, work on this, and then try to ratchet it down before Friday.
So are we officially adjourned? I'm getting bored.
Officially.